As the lid of the coffin closes and the earth begins to gently fall from above, everything around grows still. It seems as though the story has ended, the final period placed, and nothing more will follow. Yet, it is precisely at this moment, in the first hour, on the first night after death, that something begins which few dare to speak aloud. My name is Natalia Bekhtereva. I have dedicated my life to studying the brain, consciousness, and those boundaries that science has yet to explain. Although I was raised in a strictly scientific environment where every hypothesis must be confirmed by experiment, I could not ignore what people experience, especially in the final moments of life and beyond. This video is not a product of imagination, it is the fruit of observations. These reflections are based on the experiences of thousands who have undergone clinical death. This data has been meticulously collected and compared. It is an attempt to explain the inexplicable. The first night in the grave sounds like a metaphor. But for the soul that has just left the body, it is not a metaphor, it is reality, harsh, alien, filled with strange silence and a cold that penetrates not the flesh, for the flesh is no more, but consciousness itself. You might ask, if a person has died, why speak of what they feel? Can they feel anything at all? The answer is shocking. Numerous accounts indicate that consciousness, however we define it, does not switch off immediately. It separates. It seems to float, and for several hours, sometimes even longer, it continues to be aware of what has happened. It wanders, it is confused, it tries to understand why it cannot speak, why no one hears it, why the body is motionless. But I am still here. This is where the first night begins. For the living, it is funerals, farewells, and tears. For the soul, it is shock, silence, and loneliness. In my observations, the strongest experiences do not occur at the moment of death but immediately afterward. The soul, separated from the body, does not feel physical pain, it is no more, but it feels a sense of loss of self. As if someone has turned off the entire world but left a small bulb flickering in the void. One of the most troubling themes in this area is what happens when the body is committed to the earth. A sacred moment that many consider the end, but for the soul, it is the beginning of confinement, especially if the soul is unprepared, especially if during life the person rejected everything beyond the material. Many souls, according to eyewitness accounts and indirect data from near-death experiences, remain near their bodies. They find it difficult to leave. They feel that something remains unsaid, that life is unfinished, that they have not been released or they themselves have not let go. This can continue for more than one day, but the first night is special. On this night, the soul realizes for the first time that it cannot return. It watches as relatives disperse, as the doors of the ritual hall close, as the light slowly fades, and only silence remains. A cosmic silence that lies heavy, from which there is no escape. It is on this night that the first inner judgment occurs. Not an external one, not the one religions speak of, where judges sit and weigh deeds, but an internal one. The soul looks at its life as if on film, without embellishment, without self-justification. Everything that was, both good and terrible, comes to it with a clarity that does not exist in life. Some describe it as a burning sense of shame, others as deep remorse, and some as light and peace. It all depends on how the person lived, not by the number of good deeds, but by the intentions with which they were done, by sincerity, by the ability to love, forgive, and feel. The brain shuts down, but consciousness does not disappear. This mystery has more than once baffled even the most rigid materialists. I have personally met resuscitators who have seen people return with stories of what happened in the ward during the minutes when their hearts were not beating. They heard the doctor's conversations, described the colors of the clothes, even the thoughts that flashed through someone's mind. All this suggests that our I does not die with the body. It waits, it observes, it tries to understand what now. And here the most painful truth is revealed. If the soul departs peacefully on the first night, with acceptance, it moves on. But if it remains in fear, in anger, in non-acceptance, stagnation begins. What we call wandering souls often originates on this very first night. When I first encountered the stories of people who had experienced clinical death, I was struck by one thing. Almost all of them described not a feeling of horror, but a state of an observer. They looked at their bodies from the outside, heard everything around them, felt the emotions of their loved ones, but could not intervene. They were not frightened by death, they were frightened by loneliness. Imagine you are standing in a room full of people who are crying for you, talking about you, looking at you, but they do not see you. You are right there, literally a meter away from them, but you are invisible, intangible. You want to touch, hug, scream, I am here. But no sound comes out, because there is no longer a voice, no body, only consciousness and the pain of separation. The first night is not just a night of loneliness, it is a night of memories, of reflection. Everything you have ever felt, done, or said returns, flashing back. First, there are moments of love, then pain, then everything together. The soul sees whom it has hurt. It feels the pain it has caused others, not as an observer, but as a participant. As if it is reliving everything again, but now without the possibility of changing anything. This experience is comparable to fire, not an external one, but an internal one. The burning of illusions. The soul can no longer justify itself. All the masks it wore in life fall away. Only the truth remains, not the one recorded in documents or judged by people, but the real one, without embellishment, pure. And here it is important to understand one thing: the soul does not judge, it judges itself. And now the most terrifying part. If a person has lived their life in denial of love, compassion, spirituality, faith, even the slightest hint of inner work, their soul loses its orientation. It does not understand where to go. It gets confused. It returns to the body, to the place of death, to the home. It wanders between worlds. It is pulled down to the earth, to the dense, to the familiar. And then begins the phenomenon that many seers have described as a stuck consciousness. This is the so-called gray zone. The space between worlds. Neither here nor there, neither alive nor dead. The soul, as if trapped in the repetition of the last moment, cannot move forward. And all because the first night was not acceptance, but protest. And you know what is most amazing? There are millions of such souls. They are among us. Their energy is felt in old houses, in cemeteries, in hospitals, where death was unexpected, tragic, and unaccepted. They are drawn to everything connected with their past, especially loved ones. That is why those who have recently lost a loved one often say that they feel them nearby. This is not just a figure of speech. On the first night, and sometimes in the following ones, the soul is indeed nearby. It is saying goodbye or cannot leave. And if the death was violent or the person left in anger, the soul can remain stuck for a long time. Some describe it as a closed loop. The same scenes, the same thoughts, the inability to move. This is hell, not created by God, but by man. I often wondered why no one teaches us to die. We study how to be successful, how to earn, how to love, but we do not learn to let go, to forgive, to complete. Meanwhile, ancient peoples had entire schools of preparation for death. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of Transition, Christian prayers for the departure of the soul. All these are attempts to help the soul pass the first night, not to get stuck, not to be afraid, not to start clinging to the earth. Because if the soul accepts death, it begins to move. First slowly, then more easily. And then those who have already passed come to it, relatives, guides, beings of light. They cannot interfere until the soul takes the first step, until it itself wants to leave. That is why prayers, memories with love, silence, and light during farewell are so important. This is not for the living. This is primarily for the dead. They hear, they feel, they wait. When the first night comes to an end and dawn slowly rises over the earth, it seems that everything is over. But for the soul, it is only the beginning. If it has accepted its transition, if it has let go of the earthly, the next phase begins. We can call it whatever we want: transition, ascension, disembodiment. But the essence is one. The soul begins to leave the space where it once dwelled. And here one of the most mysterious and controversial phenomena that I have encountered as a scientist comes into play. The overlapping of worlds. The world of souls is not somewhere far away. It is here. It overlays our physical world like a transparent veil. This is not fiction. It is described in hundreds of testimonies. People who have experienced clinical death say the same thing. I was in the same room, but everything looked different. Time flowed differently. Light emanated from the objects themselves. People did not see me, but I saw them. This is not delusion. It is a different frequency of perception. How to explain this from the point of view of neurophysiology? Not yet possible. But the phenomenon is observed, which means it is real. The soul, leaving the body, first enters this layer, the layer of earthly attachment. It still feels gravity, still reaches for familiar places, for loved ones. But if the process of acceptance continues, if there is no fear in the soul, it rises higher. As absurd as it may sound, it is not about physical ascent, but about a change of state, from heavy to light, from dense to subtle, from emotional to purely contemplative. And here the next stage begins, the meeting with the guide. This can be a relative long gone or someone the soul loved in life, sometimes a complete stranger, but a very bright entity. They do not come immediately. They wait until the soul detaches from the body, until it lets go of fear, until it is able to hear. And when this meeting happens, the deepest transformation begins. The soul feels a love it did not know on earth, unconditional, penetrating. It realizes that it is not being judged, accused, or frightened. It has simply been awaited all this time. But not everyone reaches this moment. Thousands of souls remain below. Not because of punishment, but because of their own refusal to move. Because of fear, guilt, dependence on the material. They are afraid of the light because they know it will reveal everything. And they hide in their thoughts, in their attachments, in the places they loved in life. They are called stuck, ghosts, shadows. But in essence, they are people who have not completed their journey, who have not lived through the first night. What can be done for such souls? A lot. We, the living, can help through prayer, forgiveness, mentally addressing them with love. Even a simple word, "I forgive you," can break the chain that holds the soul to the earth. There is another thing, remembrance without suffering. When we cry for the dead, they feel our pain and cannot leave. But when we remember them with warmth, they let go and leave peacefully. That is why it is so important how the first night passes. It is not just a night, it is the foundation of the entire subsequent fate of the soul. If it is spent in fear, in despair, wandering begins. If in peace, with realization, the path upward begins. This is not religion. It is structure. It repeats from case to case, regardless of faith, culture, or language. I have read accounts from people in India, Norway, Japan, Peru, and everywhere the same stages: separation, realization, farewell, meeting, transition. And I ask myself one question. If we spend so much time preparing for life, why are we so afraid to prepare for death? After all, death is not the end, it is a continuation. And how we meet the first night is how we will pass through everything else. Have you ever felt that a loved one was near after their death? Or noticed strange coincidences in the first days after the funeral? Write in the comments. Your experience can help others understand that they are not alone. Subscribe to the channel if you want to learn more about the mysteries of consciousness, the soul, and life after death. Ahead, it will only get deeper. There is a moment that almost no one talks about. It is not described in religious books or mentioned in scientific works. This moment comes on the second day after death, when the soul has passed the first night and finds itself faced with a choice. This choice cannot be called conscious in the usual sense. It is rather an inner response, a deep reaction of the soul to what it has seen in itself. Because after the night of memories, after the meeting with the guide, after the realization of its own life, the soul becomes naked, without roles, without masks, without titles. Only it and its essence. And at this moment, two directions emerge. The first is acceptance. The soul sees everything, its mistakes, pain, love, unsaid words, and agrees with it. Not in the sense of justifying, but simply accepting. Yes, this is me, I lived this way, and now I am ready to move on. The second is denial. The soul is afraid, resists, tries to prove that not everything is so clear-cut, that it is not to blame, that it was not understood. And in this denial, it repeatedly replays the same scenes of life, like a worn-out record. It cannot let them go because it cannot acknowledge its part in them. The choice between light and shadow, between humility and fear, between movement and stagnant pain. I am convinced that hell is not a place. It is a state into which the soul drives itself. Not because of punishment, but because of the inability to let go. Why do I speak of this so confidently? Because dozens, hundreds of accounts of people who have returned from clinical death describe this feeling. Not that someone judged them, but that they themselves could not bear what they saw. Someone said, "I was surrounded by love, but I felt shame, as if standing naked before the truth." Someone else, "I saw every moment in which I could have acted differently, and I was pained not by punishment, but by the missed opportunities." This is the inner measure, not the external one. What happens to those who choose to move on? Such souls are awaited by the next space. The space of purification. It cannot be explained by logic. It is like silence in which everything is heard. There is no time there as we know it. There is a process. The soul immerses itself in light that simultaneously heals and reveals, as if it is immersing itself in a stream where every wound is gently washed, every pain is released. This is not heaven as it is depicted on icons. It is an inner state of peace, pure, clear, transparent, where there is no longer anything to prove, where the soul feels itself as it always was but had forgotten. And what about those who refuse? They are awaited by repetition. But not necessarily torment, sometimes just a stop. They hover at a certain stage, return to places, people, situations that they cannot let go of. It is such souls that most often become what people call ghosts. But they should not be thought of as evil or scary. They are suffering consciousnesses. The lost, they should not be feared. They need compassion. We can help them even from a distance, with a bright thought, a prayer, forgiveness. We are connected even after death. Sometimes a soul stuck in this state still takes a step through the dreams of loved ones, through strong emotional outbursts, through a sign. It is like a cry for help. And if we respond, it moves slowly but surely, because love knows no barriers. I recall one case. A woman who had lost her husband began to see him in her dreams, sad and silent. She could not understand what was happening. But then she decided, lit a candle, sat in silence, and said aloud, "I forgive you and let you go." After that, the dreams stopped. Her soul became calm, and perhaps his did too. We live as if death is a taboo. As if speaking of it is a bad omen. But this is not true. Silence does not protect, understanding protects, preparation protects, love protects. When a person dies, it does not mean that everything is over. It means that another path begins. And how we live through the first night determines this entire path. It can be bright, or it can be endlessly long. Share in the comments. Do you believe that the soul can get stuck between worlds? Do you know stories of such souls? Your experience can open the eyes of others. Subscribe to the channel. Ahead, we will reveal what neither doctors nor priests talk about. And the deeper we go, the closer we get to the truth. Have you ever wondered why in some cultures the body of the deceased is buried immediately within a few hours, while in others only on the third or fourth day? Why do some rituals require absolute silence, while others require loud music, chants, even dance? These differences are not accidental. They reflect ancient knowledge about what happens to the soul in the first days after death, especially in the first 3 days. After the first night, after meeting the guide and making an inner choice, the soul begins to expand, as it were. Its consciousness is no longer confined to the body, and it can perceive space differently. At this moment, the soul is especially sensitive to vibrations, thoughts, emotions, sounds, even smells. All this affects its state. The second and third nights are critical times. In many traditions, these 3 days are called the days between worlds. It is believed that the soul is still near the body but is already preparing to leave. And it is during these days that it is most vulnerable. It can waver, return in thought to the unfinished, doubt, listen to what is said about it, feel everything. That is why it is especially important how we behave during these days. Not for the sake of ritual, but for the sake of the soul. If there is crying, cursing, and quarreling nearby, the soul cannot leave. If around it there are prayers, words of gratitude, and love, it finds peace. This is not a metaphor, it is energy. We transmit it, even without realizing it. That is why in ancient times they maintained silence in the house of the deceased. That is why candles burned continuously, to remind the soul of the light. That is why the body was not left alone, so that it would not feel abandoned. All this is not superstition, it is a way to support the transition. In my practice, there have been cases where families noticed that until they said what they did not have time to say during their lifetime, dreams with the deceased were heavy and anxious. But as soon as they said aloud, "Forgive me," or "I love you," or "You can go," peace came. Not only to the living but, it seems, to the soul as well. On the third day, what many spiritual traditions call the splitting of ties occurs. This is not scary, it is natural. The soul detaches from earthly threads, from home, name, and duties. It becomes free but at the same time vulnerable, like a newborn in reverse. And if at this moment it is called back, it can stay out of love, a sense of duty, or fear. That is why it is so important to say the words of release, "Thy will be done. Go in peace. Thank you." These are not just phrases. They are energetic bridges by which the soul leaves easily, without heaviness, without debts, without shackles. On the third day, the countdown of new time begins. If the soul leaves, it enters a new space. If not, it begins to wander, return, and seek meaning. And sometimes, years, centuries, even millennia later, it is still nearby because no one told it, "You can go." I want you to understand that this is not about fear, not about mysticism, not about punishments. It is about care, about love, about ensuring that every being departs to the other world as dignifiedly as it once came into this one. We teach children how to live. Why not learn to see off souls with the same depth and respect? Sometimes all of life comes down to one moment when someone holds your hand and whispers, "You are not alone." Let us be such people. Let those who have left be sure that they are loved and that their path continues. Lightly, without fear, without delay. Have you ever felt the presence of the departed in the first 3 days after their passing? What did you feel? Share in the comments. Your experience can be a comfort to others. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next part. We will tell you what happens on the 9th day and why it is then that the soul decides where to go next. 9 days pass. It seems that everything is already behind: the funeral, the tears, the farewells. Life goes on. The world seems to pull you into its rhythm. But it is precisely on the 9th day that something happens that cannot be seen with the eyes but changes everything. If the first 3 days are about saying goodbye to the body, roles, and earthly life, then the 9th day is the decisive turning point for the soul. This is the moment when it finally detaches from the physical and begins its journey through the spiritual worlds. But in which direction? No one decides for it. There is no supreme judge with a hammer in hand. There is no instant verdict. There is only reflection. The soul, as it were, looks at its heart, and it speaks for it. On this day, the soul passes through a space that in the Orthodox tradition is called torment, but not in a punitive sense, as is often thought. This is not judgment, this is purity, this is truth. Without embellishment, without self-deception, it remembers everything, not just deeds, but motives. In life, we can do good out of fear of being bad, or help for praise, or remain silent when we should have spoken. The soul sees everything and cannot turn away. It is as if in a mirror, but this mirror does not show the face, it shows the essence. If at this moment the soul is filled with love, sincere repentance, gratitude, and readiness to let go, it is light, it is as if pulled upward by the light, because it itself has become light. But if it is filled with fear, hatred, resentment, and bitterness, it remains below. Not by sentence, but by weight. That is why in many cultures on the 9th day people gather to pray not just for the sake of memory, but to help the soul pass this path. Because the words spoken here on earth reach that space. If you think that your thoughts are not heard by the departed, you are mistaken. The soul hears not with ears, the soul hears with the heart, and the heart is beyond distances. On the 9th day, the soul acquires a special state, the vision of the path. It is as if it looks ahead, not in the sense of the future, but in the sense of direction, like a river that suddenly sees where it needs to flow. And this choice it makes not alone. It is precisely at this time that those whom it loved, those who have already left, relatives, friends, sometimes even strangers, appear next to the soul. But kindred spirits, they come to meet, to calm, to accompany. This is not imagination, it is a meeting. It happens that the soul does not want to leave, it is pulled back. Especially if someone among the loved ones is suffering too much. If someone holds it with the words, "Do not go, I cannot live without you. Why did you die?" It hears this and cannot move, as if held by a thread of pain. But if someone says, "I love you, and I let you go. Thank you for being. Go in peace," this thread turns into a bridge by which the soul can go into the light. That is why it is so important not to call back, not to hold on, not to despair. Grief is natural, but love is stronger. True love lets go. On the 9th day, the soul begins the process of entering its true home, where there is no body, no fear, no time. Only it and God, only it and the light, only it and silence. Some feel this moment physically. A sudden lightness, warmth in the chest, a dream in which the departed smiles. This is a sign, a farewell, a thank you. If you have ever woken up in the morning and suddenly felt that he is no longer here, perhaps it was on the 9th day, because it is then that the soul truly leaves, and the quieter we are inside, the clearer we will feel it. Have you ever felt a strange lightness or signs on the 9th day after the departure of a loved one? Write in the comments, such stories are important. Subscribe to the channel. In the next part, we will talk about the 40th day. Why is this the point of no return, and what does the soul do before disappearing from our world forever? 40 days. This date is surrounded by mysticism, tradition, fears, and hope. It is mentioned in all religions. It is feared and awaited. It is prepared for as an invisible exam. But few truly understand what happens to the soul on the 40th day and why it is then that everything is decided. For 40 days, the soul seems to hover between worlds. It remembers, observes, says goodbye. It returns to the places that were dear to it. It visits loved ones. It is as if it is looking for answers, understanding what was important, what was in vain, where it needed to say, "Forgive me," and where, "I love you." These days are transitional. The soul no longer belongs to the earthly world but has not yet dissolved into another. It is given time not for merits, not for sins, but out of love. It is like a farewell tour of the room where you lived your whole life before closing the door forever. Some people have said that during these days they felt strange sensations, as if someone was nearby. A shadow in the corner, a faint scent of childhood, music from nowhere, or a dream in which the deceased sits silently across from you and looks with something important in their eyes. These are not hallucinations. This is not a play of the mind. This is a real presence, subtle, warm, the last. On the 40th day, the soul encounters something that cannot be described in words. Some call it God, some call it light, some call it the true self. It is not an image, not a figure. It is absolute knowledge about oneself, about the world, about every action, every glance, every breath. And at this moment, there is no need to say, everything has already been said, everything has already been seen. Imagine looking at yourself not with eyes, but from within, without justifications, without fear, just as you are. And suddenly you understand, everything you loved remains with you. Everything you feared falls away, and everything you did with love begins to shine literally. On the 40th day, the soul makes the final choice not between hell and heaven, not between punishment and reward, but between two states, to dissolve in the light or to remain in the shadow. To dissolve means to accept, to forgive, to let go, to stop clinging, to be ready to become part of the whole, to go in peace. To remain means not to cope, to get stuck in resentments, regrets, fears, to remain tied to the home, to things, to pain. And in this case, the soul remains at the lower levels, sometimes for a long time, sometimes forever. Not as a punishment, but as a consequence, as a burden that does not allow it to take off. Therefore, the 40th day is not just a date, it is a spiritual milestone. On this day, it is especially important to pray, to give thanks, to let go, to say aloud, "I forgive you." And forgive me. Go, the light awaits you. Many underestimate the power of these words, thinking that my prayer will change nothing. But it changes everything because the soul hears, even if you do not believe, even if you do not say it aloud, even if you just sit silently but with love in your heart. In my practice, there have been cases where people received answers precisely on this day. A letter from the past arrived, a forgotten diary was opened, a photograph with an inscription that no one had noticed before was found. This is not a coincidence, it is a farewell. The last, I am with you. The last, I am leaving. After the 40th day, another reality begins. The soul no longer returns. It either rises to the light, becoming what we call a guardian angel, or remains in the intermediate worlds, awaiting rebirth or purification. But it is no longer nearby. That is why after 40 days a special feeling of emptiness sets in. As if the door has closed, as if the room has emptied. But this is not bad. It is a sign. The soul has completed its journey. It has left. It is free. And have you felt a change after the 40th day? As if something has changed. Share this in the comments. Your words can help others understand that they are not alone. Subscribe to the channel because in the next part we will talk about where the soul goes after the 40th day, where it goes and why some return not of their own will. After 40 days, the soul no longer belongs to this world. It stops visiting beloved places, stops watching over loved ones, stops remembering the body. But this is not the end. It is the beginning of a journey into the space that people call the world of souls. What is this place? It is not heaven, not clouds, not gates with golden locks, as depicted on icons. It is a level of consciousness in which there is no time, no matter, only energy and memory. Here the soul, as it were, enters a sphere where everything it has done continues to live in the form of vibrations. Everything. Even the thought that no one heard, even the good that no one appreciated, even the pain about which it was silent. In these layers, there is no language, no bodies, but there is recognition. Here souls meet without words. They feel each other, they merge in memories. And it is here that something happens that is difficult to explain in words. The soul sees its entire life at once, in one glance, one feeling, one breath. It is as if you were standing on the top of a mountain and saw not only the road you have traveled but all the paths you could have chosen but did not. All the meetings that passed by, all the turns that changed your fate. And then the main question arises, is the soul ready for the next step? This step is a return, but not to the former body, not to the former city, but to a new form, a new task, a new embodiment. Yes, we are talking about reincarnation, but not in the sense of an endless carousel of lives, but as a continuation of the evolution of consciousness. Some souls return quickly, especially if their departure was violent, sudden, if there was unfinished business, karmic knots, debts. Such souls ask to return because they feel that not everything has been lived. But there are those who remain in the space of light. Not because they are worthy, but because they are ready for silence, to be just light, just love, without form, without name. And there is a third path, return not of one's own will. It is frightening to admit, but some souls become part of systems that use their energy like batteries, like elements of other worlds. This is what the ancients called soul traps. These traps are created by fear, greed, aggression. A soul that has not coped with them during life is attracted to them after death. In such cases, it does not enter the light, not into rebirth, but into a gray space, without time, without love, without memory. There is no suffering there, but there is no growth either. Only endless nothingness. Emptiness. Some souls try to escape. They look for a way. They appear in dreams, in visions, in spaces between sleep and wakefulness. They knock on our world sometimes through children, sometimes through voices, sometimes through sudden melancholy that cannot be explained. What to do if you feel such a presence? Something simple but powerful. Say aloud or to yourself, you are free, you no longer need to suffer. Go into the light. And even if it seems silly to you, believe me, the soul will hear, because the soul hears not with ears, it hears the truth. After 40 days, the soul no longer belongs to the body, nor to the home, nor to the photographs on the wall. It becomes part of the spiritual field. And if we continue to hold it here with thoughts, tears, and pain, we do not let it move. We keep it as a shadow. But if we remember with love, not with pain, but with gratitude, we give it wings. Have you ever felt as if someone was talking to you in a dream, or as if you heard a voice when no one was around? Share this in the comments. It may be more than it seems. Subscribe to the channel. In the next part, we will talk about what gray zones are, where souls can get stuck for centuries, and why it is important to pray not only for loved ones but also for the forgotten. Sometimes it seems that death is the end. A black curtain after which there is nothing, or, on the contrary, the beginning of something bright, light, liberating. But the truth is more complex. Death is a fork in the road, and beyond it, there is not one path, but many. And one of the most frightening is the path into the gray zones. What are they? It is not hell, not punishment. It is places where souls get stuck, not ready for either light or rebirth. It is a space woven from fear, regrets, anger, and despair. There is no time there, no body, but there is everything unexpressed, everything not let go, everything that a person concealed from themselves during life. The gray zones are like an old attic of consciousness, where dust covers important memories, and cobwebs are woven from unsaid words. It is a stagnation of the spirit. A place where the soul, as it were, freezes, does not move, does not grow, does not suffer, but does not live. Some souls end up there immediately after death. For example, if a person left suddenly and did not understand that they had died, they continue to live without realizing that they are already outside the body. They come home, talk to loved ones, get angry that no one hears them. They feel loneliness but do not understand why this can last for years, decades. For them, it is a moment, for us, it is a whole life. And there are other souls, those who refuse to leave because of offense, revenge, attachment. They remain near the place of death, near the beloved home, near the person to whom they did not have time to say something. They become what is called restless spirits. You may have heard stories. Someone feels cold in one room. Someone notices a lamp turning on by itself. Someone hears footsteps when there is no one at home. This is not fantasy, it is the echo of a soul stuck between worlds. But the most terrible form of gray zones is the fields of fear. These are places where souls who died in torment, in war, in disasters, in aggression gather. Their consciousness, as it were, freezes at the moment of pain. They cannot move on. They are stuck in a loop of the last seconds. It seems to them that the war is still going on, that they are still falling from the plane, that they are still being held underwater. Their cry is not heard. But it is felt, it hangs in the air, it becomes a heaviness in the heart, it is transmitted through generations like a birth trauma. Sometimes a sudden depression that a person cannot explain is not their pain, it is the call of a stuck soul. Can such souls be helped? Yes, in the simplest way, through prayer, memory, recognition. When we remember sincerely, without fear, we give the soul energy to move on. When we say, "You are not alone, I see you, you are free," it is like opening a window in a locked house. Light enters, the soul finds a way out. The strongest practices are commemorations made with love, not as an obligation, but as an act of liberation. Even simply lighting a candle with thoughts of the soul can change its path. But the main thing is not to hold on, not to cling, not to cry, "Come back," but to whisper, "Go in peace, I will live for you too. I remember you, I let you go." Have you ever felt that someone who has passed away has not completely left? That they are nearby but not at peace? Share this in the comments. It is important because such stories can help others let go. Subscribe to the channel. In the next part, we will talk about what the soul sees if it still enters the light and why for some it is a shock, not a relief.